everybody, welcome to this channel again today. I cannot begin to tell you how much I appreciate your presence, your likes and your comments. And those of you who haven't pressed subscribe yet, please do so. Well, let's get straight into today's video. I feel really sorry for Princess Mette-Marit of Norway. She's really going through a tough time. She recently had severe health issues. Well, she had it for a long time and it seems to flare up every now and then. She recently also celebrated her 52nd birthday, and the day before her birthday it was announced that the Norwegian court have decided to charge her eldest son with 32 offences, which includes 4 counts of rape. Her son is 28-year-old Marius Borg and was born from a previous relationship. I see in a chat room that legal eagles reckon that Marius Borg will get 15 to 18 years in jail. I feel terribly sorry for his mother, but I think there's a lesson to be learned here, particularly for people like Meghan and Harry who think that they are untouchable. Times are changing. People are changing. And I'm sorry to say this, but I think the so-called elite are finally losing the game. They pushed our buttons to a point, a breaking point, and a point where we are now questioning everything. And we're no longer really afraid of them either. Now, Harry never tried to be a goody two-shoes. He never pretended to be holier than thou, at least not before he met Meghan. So at least that tidbit, that little bit, I will give him credit for. Harry was still a teenager when rumours about drugs and alcohol used to surface, and as he grew older, it did not get better. Nazi uniforms, wild nights ending in fist fights with photographers, drunk, falling off a balcony, falling into a pool, throwing girls in designer dresses into a swimming pool at a formal event, being photographed naked in Las Vegas, smoking and drinking in public. The list goes on and on and on and on. Harry was supposedly a prankster, the naughty boy. But what is concerning is that there had been talk of him doing more than pulling pranks, and that, like Marius Borg, he at times needed the cuffs slammed on him, or at least a few times. But that he got away with some horrific acts just because he is the king's son. It had often, allegedly, been a case of his bodyguards intervening and removing him before he could be arrested. So far, I know this to be true because we saw that with our own eyes and because Harry admitted it in his book Spare. Although he mostly liked his bodyguards and they even became mates in some cases, Harry also treated them horrifically at times. One instance he actually described in his book was how he asked the driver he was provided with for the World Cup in Paris to take him through the Pont de Alma tunnel where his mother's accident happened. Afterwards he went for drinks, where he actually caused a disturbance. Harry, by his own admission, was trying to pick fights with various people and he was eventually thrown out. His bodyguard, whom he called Billy the Rock, and who was later identified as Sergeant Bill Renshaw, obviously accompanied him back to the hotel. Harry wrote in his book, "I tried to pick a fight with him too. I growled at him, swung at him, slapped his head. He barely reacted. He frowned like an ultra-patient parent. I slapped him again." In anybody else's book, that sounds like assault. But it was Harry, and Bill was his servant. In his book Spare, Harry obviously mentions a number of women. His mother, Megan, Camilla, Catherine, some of the house mothers or matrons at his boarding school, some of his other girlfriends and flings, etc. But after the release of his book, many authors, journalists, psychiatrists, psychologists, and basically everyone who's anybody tried to analyze Harry's perspective and feelings towards women. The language he used when talking about women was at times brutal, disgusting, dismissive. And here are at least 2 examples. The first one was about Pat, one of the matrons at the school who had disabilities and who was severely mocked by the boys. Harry wrote, "Often we'd stand on the landing below her, doing antic dances, making faces. Do I need to say which boy did this with the most enthusiasm?" And then he goes on to say, "For me, the reward was not tormenting Pat, but making my mates laugh." And then there was the female journalist whom he called a pustule on the arse of humanity. Nice, huh? Anyway, so on and on and on it goes. So it certainly appeared as if, in reality, Harry's view of women appears to be very simple and one-dimensional. Either something to be an objectifier or to be dismissed. It was as if, for him, women were there to be used for his own gratification. No respect needed. Now, there's no disputing the fact that there are rumors about Harry not only dismissing women, and for a lack of the right words, but also hurting them. Today, no one has come forward and actually said that they were physically abused by Harry, nor is there any record of any reports of abuse or violence against women, as in the case of Marius Borg. But the same stories keeps popping up, if not on Quora or Reddit, then in my Instagram DMs or email. Now, I certainly do not know for a fact whether those stories are true or not, but looking at Harry's behavior, it could very well be true. Or shall I say, it could be possible. Although I could not find the article or the pictures, but I remember seeing an article and pictures of Harry leaving his room with a 17-year-old girl when he was in his mid-20s, I think. So I'm truly not going to advocate for Harry's loving and caring engagement with women in general. I think that there is some truth to the rumors. Remember, my opinion only. What bothers me, though, is that the British Royal House hardly ever, if not never, take any responsibility for their actions. Now, I'm one of a few people, for instance, who believe that Charles did father another child, whether that child be Simon, Jason, or that German fellow. I don't know. But if you look at Prince Albert of Monaco, I cannot see Charles dodging the bullet after having had several different sexual companions over his lifetime. The difference, in my opinion, between Albert and Charles being that Albert acknowledged and took care of his children, whereas Charles, true to form, denied it and kept denying it until most people believed the denial. That is what the British royals seem to do. If they keep saying, no, it's not true, no, it's not true, no, it's not true, that eventually we will believe them. It is not true. And especially when it comes to, say, criminal responsibility, it is difficult to accept that there are people walking this planet who seem totally exempt from any liability, any prosecution. It's actually sickening. For instance, do you guys know about the incident at Closters? In short, Charles and a group of people were skiing, and Charles wanted to go up a certain slope, which they were told not to. The slope was closed due to the adverse weather conditions and the danger associated with it. But Charlie Boy insisted. The group went up with him. There was an avalanche, and Major Hugh Lindsay died. Major Lindsay was only 34 and his wife was pregnant. There was an inquiry and no one was found responsible. Just like the British court could not find any misogynoir in Harry's case with Dr. Sophie. Of course the British court will never find a royal guilty of anything. The power of the monarchy keeps the Windsors safe. So, will Harry's misconduct ever surface? Will there ever be justice? Well, I would say, at the moment, that you should not hold your breath. But anyway, guys, like I said, life, people, and Earth is indeed changing at a rapid pace at the moment. So what may be true today may not be true tomorrow. Okay, guys, a tidbit about my new hobby. There is a growing consensus that 3I Atlas is an interstellar comet. But another issue cropped up. 3I Atlas is much brighter than Oumuamua and 2I Borisov. Yet it still does not have a tail trailing away from the sun and still seem to radiate light at the front of the object and around the nucleus. The portions of gas and dust which creates this coma, this glow around the comet, let's call it a comet, has so far also not been found. Yes, there is dust and gases, but not yet in the correct amounts and ratios one would expect for something that large and out there in our solar system. To date, with all the explanations out there, there are still not big and or correct answers, and the one possibility at the moment which is being discussed is that it is somehow generating its own light, or the core is rich in radioactive material. Tell you what, One way or the other, it is indeed strange. And goodness, I cannot wait for the month ahead so that we can get some more answers. Okay, guys, that's it from me. So until we meet again on the next one, please take good care of yourselves and stay safe. Bye.